and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be super weird and super different because this is the first time that I'm ever doing a frontwards facing video, and I'm not none of this is according to schedule. I didn't intend to do these kinds of videos until later in July because I wanted to have my first booktube video be about my June book of the month picks, which include Recursion and Circe. So get these in frame. So Recursion is a book that was one of the 5 you get to pick for book of the month. Circe was one that I added on. Both of those I'll talk about more in a future video. Just that's when I would start this. And then secondly, I thought I would be filming in a slightly different location, and right now I'm filming on my couch because it's been the easiest place for me to be recently. I did sprain my ankle a few weeks ago, not like 2 weeks, and you can see my crutches right there, and so I'm just on my couch where I've been for like a week and a half. I spent way more time on my feet when I first sprained my ankle than I should have, which is why it's taking so long for things to heal now. I'm also trying not to shake my camera, but it is being held on my camera holder, which is connected to my laptop, which is on my lap, and I'm moving because I'm excited. So these videos will get better. This is the first time I'm doing this. What else? Also, I don't know how to look at the camera. The camera's over here, but I want to look at the screen. But my camera screen is not where the camera is, so I'll be practicing that during this video as well. But I wanted to film this because I'm super excited. So the thing that kind of skewed all my plans for how I was going to do these videos is that I learned about a readathon called the Book Junkie Trials. And so before I even found out about that readathon, I found out about readathons in general, and those are things that I'd never heard of before until I joined the Peanut Butter Taco book group. It's called Peanut Butter Taco About Books or something like that. I'll have the Facebook group links below, but it's basically where the owner of Peanut Butter Taco hosts this group that does a lot of reading oriented things, because she also does a lot of reading. She has a whole book planner that she released sometime last year, and I learned about the book planner because I'm in the planning community, so that was the first thing I learned about. Why is this auto lighting weird? Okay, that was the first thing I learned about that led me to the group, that led me to readathons, where I learned that readathons are basically different events hosted by different I'm gonna change this angle just a smidgen. There. Different events hosted by different entities that are basically in general periods of time where you're trying to read towards some kind of reading challenge. So that might be a day long, a week long, a month long readathon, and in it you're trying to do some challenge. Sometimes it's as general as read as much as you can in that time, and you're just trying to read as much as you can. Sometimes you're reading towards different kinds of prompts, and for those prompts you're just it says something about what you should be reading. So read a book by an author whose name starts with R or something like that, and then you try to find a book like that. And sometimes you can have lots of different prompts, and multiple prompts can fit a particular book. So if one readathon has the prompts read a book that starts with R, or read a book whose title starts with the letter R, and read a book with the color yellow on the front, well then Recursion would fit for both, right? Because Recursion is a yellow covered book whose title starts with R. Sometimes book readathons let you have one book fit multiple prompts. Sometimes they ask you to read an individual book per prompt. It really just depends on the readathon. It also depends on how you want to play, because at the end of the day, readathons are just for fun, and maybe you don't want to read a book per prompt. It just depends. No one's at your house making sure you're playing by all the rules. But they're fun, and they're fun challenges, and I'm super excited because I have been wanting to read more books. This has come up in several of my recent videos. I set up a book and reading tracker for my Erin Condren setup this year, and you saw me do that sometime last week. And so I thought that this would be a really fun way to encourage me to read, because it's the setting of challenges and the meeting of goals, which is just, you know, always fun. And I have a lot of time right now. I'm on crutches, so I'm not going all about the place. Like, I've stayed in my apartment most days for the past week, and just hanging out, trying to let my foot heal. Perfect time to read a lot, basically. So that's what started all of this. More about the Book Junkie trials, which is the readathon that I'm actually doing. So there are glares in my glasses. I can't fix that. I need my glasses to see. And also, in the glare, you will be seeing the reflection of my phone. I need to look at the camera. You'll be seeing the reflection of my phone, and then sometimes my laptop, which has some notes on it that I'm referencing. But yeah, so for the Book Junkie trials, this one is so much fun. I don't remember how I found it. Let me think. Yes, I do. Little Paper Owl, I think. If I get the name wrong, I'll have the website linked below. She had a video on inked print owls. I don't know. I'll link her below. But I found someone on YouTube that had a video of 2019 readathons, and at the bottom of this video was a link to a calendar she put together of all the different readathons she knew about. And one of them was the Book Junkie trials. And the Book Junkie trials is a fantasy-themed readathon where you're basically pretending that, like, you're in this fantasy world, and there's this map that the creator put together, so it's super detailed and super cool, where you have 4 teams, and you're trying to go through the Book Junkie trials to get to the Book Junkie Grail, the Bookie Grail. And it's just super cool because there's this map, and each team has a set path through the map, and each path will take you to 5 different places or 5 different prompts. And the 4 teams are the Magi, the Bards, the Scribes, and the Outlaws. And each team has a team leader who's a booktuber that's, like, I guess kind of co-hosting with the person who started the Book Junkie trials, which I don't know if I said her name. It's Rachel Marie Book Junkie on YouTube, and it's so cool. She has a personality test that you can take to determine your team, and you can pick whatever team you want. You don't have to pick just the one that the test says you are matched to. But I got matched to the Magi, and I'm super excited about it. I feel like that was I'm just happy with that pick, so I'm going to be on that team. And part of what you have to do for this readathon is you are supposed to read a different book per prompt, and you're supposed to announce your TBR, your to be read list, and stick to it. You're not supposed to deviate from that list, unless you are a scribe, I think, which has the power or the ability that they can change one thing on their list. So in addition to the 4 teams, each team has a weakness and an ability. So each weakness and ability is described by the respective team leaders. I'll link the different team leaders down below. You can find all the weaknesses and strengths for the different teams if you want. But for the Magi in particular, and the one that applies to me, I will be, the strength is that we can start 3 days early. So on June the 29th is when I will start my TBR Red list. And I guess another detail is that for things to count in this readathon, you have to have read the book throughout the duration, like the time that the readathon happens. So, like, I can't read my books right now and count them for the readathon. They have to be read during the time period that the readathon is taking place. I'm going to change this again. During the time period that the readathon is taking place. And so for most people, that's from July 1st to July 31st. But for the Magi, it could be from June the 29th through July the 31st. Then our weakness is that we have to pick a book outside our comfort zone. And I put my TBR list together before I learned about this weakness, but I think I have a couple of books that it counts for anyway, and so I'll explain that as we get through it. Then, just for fun, I will also be suggesting some books for all the other prompts that I think would also fit for this different prompts. I'm not reading a book for every single prompt. I'm not committing to that. You can if you want. There are like 17 total. Each team has 4 like individual like team specific prompts, plus the Bookie Grail, which is your last destination, and it's either the group book Stardust by Neil Gaiman or a book that involves the search for something lost or something like that. There's an alternate prompt for the Bookie Grail. I will be reading Stardust, so I don't know like a ton about it. So I'm not committing to reading all the books that I'll be suggesting in the month of July. They are all books that I'm sincerely interested in, so I will be reading them sometime. They're on my general to be read list. I'll read as many of them in July as I can, but not necessarily all of them, especially because for the like third or fourth, I think it's the fourth week of July, there's another readathon that I will be participating in. More details to come about that. I'll tell you what my TBR is for that, but it's a separate TBR, and we'll get into that. It's called the Reading Rush if you want to go like look it up. But for now, I will be starting with my TBR as a mage, explaining those choices, and then bringing us into some of my ideas for some of the other prompts, well, all the other prompts if you're interested in those. So to start the TBR for the mages and what I will be reading, I have my reading journal here, which has been incredibly helpful for this, just setting this up and like putting together a to be read. I originally started this as just a place to mark what books I've read and a few quotes about them and stuff like that. I have this spread for like when I read Oathbringer last year, and basically everything that I have outlined in my introduction to my reading journal video, like that's where I've been for the past year or so. But I have changed it recently, mostly inspired by Peanut Butter Taco's reading planner. They're not currently on sale, but I saw like the layout and decided that I wanted to actually make my reading journal more of a bullet journal style reading planner thing, in the style of Peanut Butter Taco, who I'll link below too, because her planner is the inspiration for like everything that I do in here almost. So yeah, to get to my to be read list, so this is the actual to be read list that I set up. It has like each prompt and then each book that I've committed to reading. I'll get into that in a second. This is the map. I printed the map for this is the mages, so this is the whole like land that this readathon is set in, but then the mage path in particular is down in this corner. It's pretty dark. I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but I'll have the maps and resources and things that you'll need if you're interested in this readathon down below. Yeah, and then this is like where is the camera? Every team has like their list of prompts, and she has this, Rachel Marie like set it up on this really cool like paper background and this little like design of this wizard guy here, and it's just cool. So this page lists all my prompts, and so I'm going to go through each one and tell you what book I'll be reading for that prompt. So the first place that the mages go to is called Orc Grove. And so the prompt for this says, some say there is no talking to orcs, but a good political relationship is needed. Learn some orc customs by reading a book that is gruesome, gory, or gritty. And so another thing I should mention is that a lot of the team leaders and Rachel Marie herself did release different recommendation videos for things that they thought would fit these prompts. So my list, especially for the Magi TBR, the one that I'll be doing, has a lot of inspiration from those videos. So I'll try to link as many as I can, just because those are the videos that I looked at when putting together this list. And one of the videos that I looked at and got most of my inspiration from is by the team leader whose handle I believe is Becca in the books, or Becca by the books. Again, she'll be linked down below. And most of my reading will actually be done on my iPad. because it's messy, isn't it? Because that's just, it's easiest, because I have Scribd. So Scribd will also be linked below, Scribd. And it's kind of like Netflix for books. It's a subscription service that gets you access to all kinds of ebooks and audiobooks. This is not a video sponsored by Scribd in any way. The link I'll post below is an affiliate link, so if you sign up with that link, you can get your first 2 months for free, and then I'll get a free month if you sign up. But it's really cool. I had it a few years ago when I was reading like the most that I was reading. I had it for several months, and then I stopped reading as much, and it wasn't worth it anymore to keep the subscription, so I canceled it. But now going through this challenge and wanting to read more, I thought that it would be a good idea to get it again, just because it's a really good service, and it really makes it really easy to get access to a lot of different books. And so while my Magi TBR was not influenced by their availability on Scribd, after I put it together, I was looking at my library, looking at how much they would cost on Amazon, remembered Scribd, and decided to look them up. And I was surprised by how many books that were already on my TBR were on Scribd. So then, when I put together TBR lists for the other 3 themes, I thought, whoa, it would be cool if they were all on Scribd, because that's just going to be the easiest way for me to make sure that I actually try to read those books. And so every book that I'm about to recommend is available on Scribd. It's like one-stop shopping. If you want to read any of the books that I'm about to talk about, you'll find them on Scribd. And so I thought that would be a really easy way to make it really easy for you if you are interested in any of these books, because they're all available in the same place. And if you use the link below, you can read them in the first 2 months, any of them, for free. And so I thought that that would be a nice way to make things easy for you guys. So to get into the first book on my list, another thing that I really like about Scribd is that you can make lists and collections of books and save things that you want to read. And that is really fun because I have a list for all of my different book challenges. So I have a general TBR list of things I want to read, a list for Reading Rush, other books that were recommended to me for the book Junkie trials that I just want to remember and have, and then a list for each team. So my list for the bards, the scribes, the outlaws, and the mage path. So I was able to put them together, and I thought that was a lot of fun. Makes it really easy. So the first book that I will be using for Orc Grove is Scythe by Neil Shusterman. Boop. And this book was recommended to me by Becca in the books. I'm gonna look her name up right now because I want to say it right. Becca and the books. That's her YouTube channel. And she is the leader of the Magi team, and she recommended different lists for these prompts, several different books per prompt. It's a really good video. You'll find it down below. But one of the books she recommended was Scythe. And I like this book. It's not supposed to be the like most gruesome or most gritty book in that you could possibly use for this. It's one of the milder suggestions she had, and it's supposed to be a generally mild book when it comes to gritty and goriness. But it is about a world where people are no longer dying. We have the technology that people don't have to die anymore. But that means to maintain population control, this society has developed a set of people who are called scythes, and they are the ones that go out and kill people to make sure that population doesn't get out of control, since people no longer die by natural causes. And the scythes are chosen by an AI, I believe, and this AI kind of tells them the optimal way to kill people based on overcrowding, whether the person like deserves to die because of how they've lived their lives so far, like if they were reckless or something and they don't deserve it, things like that. And I thought it was an interesting book. The cover looks cool, and so that is what I will be reading for Orc Grove. Next on the path of the Magi is Old Pirates Cove, and for this one the prompt says, "Shiver me timbers. You shall be walking the plank if you don't learn how to sail better. Read a book that takes place, at least in part, on the sea. And so the book I'll be reading for that prompt is called The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Or Madeline Miller? I don't know exactly the enunciation I should be using, but this book. And this was also another book I thought was interesting. So, it's, oh wow, the description on Scribd does not actually say exactly what it's about. Now I gotta go look up what it's about. So I looked it up, and I don't have a good grasp on what all of these books are about because I haven't ever read them, and I haven't heard like a ton about them. They were just, I found them either on Scribd or they were recommended to me in one of the videos that I'll link below, something like that. So I'm not the biggest, I'm not an expert on these books whatsoever. You'll hear more about them once I've read them, but until then, I'll be flailing through describing them because I don't know them very well. So for the Song of Achilles, I'm just going to read a bit of the blurb for this book so that you get an idea of what it's about. Greece in the Age of Heroes. Patroclus, an awkward young prince, has been exiled to the court of King Peleus and his perfect son Achilles. By all rights, their paths should never cross, but Achilles takes the shamed prince as his friend, and they grow into young men skilled in the arts of war and medicine. And as they grow into young men skilled in the arts of war and medicine, their bond blossoms into something deeper, despite the displeasure of Achilles' mother, Thetis, a cruel sea goddess. Then the word comes that Helen of Sparta has been kidnapped. Torn between love and fear for his friend, Patroclus journeys with Achilles to Troy, little knowing that the years that follow will test everything they hold dear. So that sounds really interesting. That's not even the blurb I read to choose this book. I did watch a recommendation video to get that book on my TBR, but that sounds pretty cool. So I'm happy with that choice. After Old Pirate Cove, we will be traveling to Glimmer. This isle is alight with gems and crystals, one of the most picturesque spots in the High Queendom. That's the name of this land that we're being set in. Make sure you fit in with a beautiful or colorful book. So for this one, I picked a book that I thought looks really cool. Like the cover is like beautiful in that I thought it was just a super cool cover, and it was like, whoa, that looks really cool. I want to read that. And so I picked this book, Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. Sarah J. Maas. It's backwards on my screen, so that J looked like an L for a second. But it's called Throne of Glass, and this one also seems pretty cool. This has been on my TBR for a while. I mean, years. Like when I was looking for this, a book to fit this prompt, I was scrolling through my Goodreads TBR list, and I haven't been on Goodreads in years. So this list is ancient. It's like 6 years since I've updated it, and that this book has been on there for that long. I was looking for a book that I thought looked cool. And yeah. Basically, this book is about an assassin who has served several years for her crimes, but she gets the chance to win her freedom if she acts as the prince's champion to find a new royal assassin. Like there's a competition for a new royal assassin, and he chooses her to compete. Something like that. And then other contestants start dying. And so this main character is trying to figure out who's killing the other contestants before she also dies. That's the most basic description of the book I could possibly give, but it's also the extent of my understanding. Again, though, this prompt wasn't about the book necessarily. This is a prompt about the cover, so like it had to be a beautiful cover. And doesn't that look cool? We got this girl with like these sword-looking things and all of this fire or gas, or I don't even know what's around her, but she's got her hair flowing in the wind. I thought this was a really pretty book, so this is the one I'm going to read for Glimmer. Then next on the map is Draconic Isle. Oh my! This island is swarming with wyverns and dragons. Brush up on your draconic knowledge with a book that features dragons. So this was a fun prompt because there's another person, Jaded Reader, who had a whole list of books that would fit this prompt. She gave a whole video on the different kinds of dragons there are and the different kinds of books that would be feature dragons. And so I found this book based on her recommendation. This is the only book on my original TBR that wasn't an ebook on Scribd. It is an audiobook. I'm knocking my camera. It's an audiobook, and I don't know that I'll listen to the audiobook. I have it here just in case. I am not a fan of audiobooks, not standalone, really not ever. I almost never read if I'm trying to read an accompaniment to an audiobook, listen and read at the same time. I almost never read at the same pace as the person talking, and so it just confuses me to try to listen to this person and try to read on my own. But then if I try to listen to the audiobook on its own, I have the hardest time focusing on the words. Audio is not a way that I am able to listen to information very well. I always have to be in class and lecture. I always have to be writing or taking notes or following slides that the professor is using. Otherwise, I'm not there. I'm not listening. I'm not focusing. It's really hard for me. So I don't know that I'll use the audiobook. I might. But I went to my library and I got the paperback edition. So this is the edition that I have. And I'm considering this outside of my comfort zone because I very rarely read things that are, I guess, that have elements of really classic fantasy. I read things that have magic, but usually they're more modern, contemporary forms of magic. People have magic in modern day cities or something like that, or the magic systems in it are really weird, Brandon Sanderson's Summerlight Archive series has this magic system where people get the energy for their magic from stormlight, and there are these weird storms that pass through the lands that give people these powers and things like that. He has another series called the Mistborn Trilogy where people are getting their powers because they're able to eat certain elements, and each element has abilities, things like that. But just dragons or dragon writing, I think this is dragon writing. So this is a book that takes place in the Napoleonic Wars type of place, and instead of something that these people have is that they have dragons on their side, I believe, something like that. So I've never read a book where that just stars dragons, which I think is a more traditional fantasy element that isn't something I would ordinarily read. I'm also really bad about picking books based on their covers. I know that's the first thing you're not supposed to do is don't judge a book by its cover, but I wouldn't pick this book up based on the cover. It would be hard for me. I would have to have nothing else to read, or it would have to be recommended to me, or it would be a book challenge like this that says pick something outside your comfort zone. And so that is the 4 books that are specifically for the Magi path. And then the last book is the Bookie Grail. So that's the destination. That's where all teams are traveling. And that is the prompt for that is, here you find a lost manuscript delivered on this forgotten island by a fallen star. Read the group book Stardust. So this is cool because I didn't know Stardust was a book before I saw the movie. I saw the movie Stardust and I loved it. It's kind of long and a little slow in parts, but it's so fun. I really loved the movie, and so I was excited to kind of be encouraged to read the book, which is also on Scribd, and I'm excited about that. Really, it fits the prompt for one of the Reading Rush prompts. So if I find myself reading this book in the 4th week of July, I might actually count it for that too, but still, it's cool. So I'm excited to read that because I saw the movie, learned it was a book, and then thought, oh wow, I didn't know it was a book, and I've been meaning to read it but just haven't yet. So those are all the books that I am going to read for sure. Now we're going to move into the prompts for some of the other teams, where I also have like TBRs and things that I think might be a good idea if you want to read any of these prompts. So for each of these, I also have in my reading journal like a list. And yeah. And so each of these lists only have 4 books because the last one is always the same. It's Stardust. I didn't know about the alternate like option for the Bookie Grail, so I didn't pick other books. I'm just assuming that the 5th book is Stardust, but obviously you can go in and find a book that fits the alternate prompt if you want to. So for the bards, their first destination is going to be the Elven Guard. Oh, I don't have the fun version, so I'll have to pull it up. Okay, I pulled it up because I want to be able to read to you guys the actual prompts, like verbatim, because they're super fun, like the way they're worded. So the first destination for the bards is the Elven Guard. So the Elven Guard are surprised by your visit and are immediately on the offensive. Read a book with war, military, or political themes to learn how to help calm the situation. Look, I was looking on Scribd and I found this book that seems really cool. So it's called 11/22/63, a novel by Stephen King. And this is a book where there's like time travel, and an English teacher learns that his friend has like a time machine in their bar cellar or something like that, and he wants help going back to 1963 to help stop the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And I thought, whoa, that seems pretty cool. And so it has like political themes in that they're going back to stop the assassination of John F. Kennedy. And this book drew my attention because 1963 is actually the year my dad was born. I've never read anything by Stephen King. I've owned a couple of books by him, but I've never like read anything. This is a really long book, which is why I don't think I'll be getting to like all of the other prompts, like actually reading these books in the month of July, because this book is 864 pages. That's long. So I probably like won't get to that this month, but I'm excited to read it sometime. The next place the bards go is on the Hallowed Isle. Lurk incorporeal monsters and the ghosts of your past. Read an atmospheric or horror book to pass this test of nerve. I had a problem with this because I don't know, like the horror genre is not what I'm into at all, and I don't even know what an atmospheric book is. I don't know what that means. But I found this book, and they're just, one of the reviews for it is powerful, atmospheric, enthralling, and simply mesmerizing. So this review called it atmospheric, and I thought, that looks pretty cool. It is called The Winter Sea by Susanna Kearsley. And this is a book that's like about this lady, and she's a writer, and she starts to write this historical fiction novel, but then learns that the more she writes, like so much of what she's writing actually seems to have been true, and you're kind of wondering like how she knows how much all of this, and there's some betrayal or something like that. She's writing about, this is like the first sentence of the description on Scribd. It's like, history has all but forgotten. In the spring of 1708, an invading Jacobite fleet of French and Scottish soldiers nearly succeeded in landing the exiled James Stuart in Scotland to reclaim his crown. I don't know this part of history. I don't read historical fiction, but this looks interesting. For the bards, they have the weakness that one of their books has to involve musical themes, and their strength is that they can count a book that they did not finish as completing the prompts. But I did not stick to those for this list necessarily. Obviously, if you don't finish one of the books, that's not something that I can like recommend to you, how to not finish a book. But I think, yeah, I don't think any of these necessarily fit musical themes. So these aren't perfect lists, but they'll give you ideas. The next place that you go is Empty Barrel Inn. Every bar deserves a swig or two. Some say it even aids warming up those vocal cords. Enjoy an indulgent read. And so I wasn't sure, like, indulgent read is a personal choice. It's like whatever you feel is indulgent. I would have picked this book called Invisible Planets, Contemporary Chinese Fiction in Translation by Ken Liu. And I picked this one because honestly, I didn't know the meaning of indulgent. Like, I don't know how to pick an indulgent book. But this book seemed really interesting. It's a set of different short stories that are all supposed to be set in the future. It's an anthology of Chinese short speculative fiction. And this book just seemed really crazy because it's a lot of stuff that's really different to me. I don't typically read short stories. I don't read things in translation very often. And I very rarely read things in translation from Asia. I think one of the only stories I've read in translation was German. And so I was really interested in this book, and it seemed like it would be indulgent because it is still sci-fi related, and so it seemed like it would be really cool to read a genre I'm very familiar with, but from the point of view of a culture and style, like the short story style, that I don't have as much experience in. So it would just be like really interesting to read something like that's both familiar and different, like all at the same time. Then next, there's A Giant Squid, A Fearsome Fellow. Read a book that intimidates you, and this foe shall be a doddle. Oh my god, so I found this and I thought about this book before I found it on Scribd, and I was excited that it was on here because I thought it was perfect. For me, again, this is another personal choice kind of thing. I don't know what books intimidate you, but for me, it would be The Fellowship of the Ring, the first book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because I have seen the movies, finally. It took me a very long time. My boyfriend finally convinced me to watch them with him, and I love the movies. But the books freak me out, because the Lord of the Rings is an interesting phenomenon, because I did not, it took me so long to to see these movies, and it was only after I was already familiar with a ton of other fantasy elements. Like, I've read a lot of fantasy books. That's my main genre that I read. And so, in some ways, The Lord of the Rings felt very cliche. But it's funny because The Lord of the Rings is cliched because it was the series that started the cliches, you know? And so, I had to get used to that. And then, once I tried to read The Hobbit, and the first several pages were like, or maybe it was Lord of the Rings, one of the two, and the first several story pages are about like the history of the land and like the Hobbit family. I don't even remember what they were about, but they were a little boring. And I know it's supposed to be a good book series, but I'm intimidated by the idea that I have to get through introductory like prologue material before I get to the real story. And I'm also worried about the story feeling cliche, even though I know it's not, you know? And I also know it's good because I've seen the movies. I've still been avoiding reading it, so I thought that this would be a good, like, time to read it, would be to fit that prompt. And then the last book would be the group book or the alternate prompt. The next team that I want to talk about would be the scribes. And the first place that the scribes travel is Dwarf Mount. You spot a fair tavern wench. However, the dwarf mines, grimy and dusty, didn't evoke a very romantic feeling. Read a book with a hint of romance to get you in the mood. So, for that prompt, the book I found is called The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon. I'm not 100% sure that this has romance in it. I'm just hoping. The little blurb made me think that there might be some romantic elements. So this is what it looks like. And it's about a future city called Skyon where a future where something called Scion has taken over the world cities, and it promises safety for all the citizens it deems worthy, and is wiping out people called clairvoyants. So the main protagonist is a clairvoyant, and she's determined to fight the Scions and their power. But one day she is captured and arrested, and she's assigned to a keeper, a warden, who's in charge of like watching her. And that dynamic right there, just in a book, kind of screams potential romance, and some of the reviews that I read for this book actually hinted that they might have a relationship. So I don't know if that's 100% true. I never read this. I've never seen this book. But that's what I would pick if I were going to read this challenge. And it is a book that I'm interested in and I'm going to read someday. So hopefully I can confirm for you soon whether it actually has hints of romance. Next, the scribes go to the apothecary towers, where the wizards dwell, tricksters. They have blindfolded you and randomized all your books. Choose a book at random from your bookshelf. So this is an interesting prompt because I have a bookshelf, but almost all the books on my bookshelf I've already read. And most of them actually right now are books that I had to read for class. And I didn't want to read one of those either. At home, I have a very nice bookshelf. It's so good. It's so pretty. And it has like books that I collected when I was reading the most back in like middle and high school. And actually has a lot of books I haven't read on it. But those books are all at home. However, I decided to treat Scribed as like any book on there is part of my bookshelf because I have access to all those books. And so I kind of scrolled through a genre. I think I was looking at young adults and picked a random book from there. And the book I found is We Are the Ants. Again, this is supposed to be randomized, so it's up to you what you read, and you can pick a physical book from your shelf. You can randomize however you want. You can go to something like Scribd and like scroll and then pick a book, whatever. I found We Are the Ants, which is about a boy who has spent several years being abducted by aliens, and eventually the aliens give him an ultimatum. In 144 days, the world will stop the world will end unless he stops it by pressing a big red button. However, the main character isn't sure he wants to, so he's been having a hard time recently, and he's like, maybe we should just have a complete do-over, let the world end. Which I thought was really surprising, and also sets the book up to seem like it might be more of a modern day, like less sci-fi than it starts out seeming. You know, like it seems to be more a book that will ultimately be about his life and what has happened to him recently than a book about the aliens themselves. I don't know, but I'm interested in it. Oh, and I didn't read the name of the author. Sean David Hutchinson. So there's that. Then next we go to the Great Library. The Great Archives. Find and read a book that has been on your TBR forever. Also, a personal choice. I don't know, it's been on your TBR, but for me, I decided to read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This is the second book of all of the books I'm going to point out today that is an audiobook. So it's not on it's not an ebook on Scribd. It is only an audiobook, but it's a relatively short audiobook. This is like 6 hours, and I think I can sit that long through 6 hours. I also know how to get the print version, but I'm going to try to do the audiobook for this one, definitely. Finally, for the Scribes, the last location they go to other than the Booky Grail is the Drowning Deep. The whirlpool is so mesmerizing. Read a book with rich world building that will suck you into its own world instead. So I feel like a book that has rich world building, like you can only know for sure that a book has rich world building if you've read it before, and I'm not picking books that I've read before. I don't want to do that. I want to read new books. But this book was a book recommended by a few different lists I looked up for a few different categories, but it seemed like the kind of book that if it's as well written as it's like people say it is, it would also have rich world building. So it's called The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. Look, it's even won a medal. So I feel like it has to be well written. And if it's well written, the world building should be good. That's just like how I picked this book. I also really love the cover for this one. It's really pretty. And this is a book about a town where every year they sacrifice a baby to a witch that lives in the forest. And the town thinks that she's an evil witch. Like, she's taking the babies, she's sacrificing them, eating them, using them for magic. I don't know what they think she's doing, but they think she's evil. What's really happening is that the witch takes the babies and is actually giving them to a town beyond the forest to be taken care of. I don't know how this all started, but the witch is not evil, and for some reason she's not telling the people that she's not evil. I don't know the mechanism behind how this is working, but she is like saving the babies by giving them to other homes. And while she takes them through the forest, she feeds them starlight to like as sustenance. But one day she accidentally feeds one of the babies moonlight, and for whatever reason that gives the girl powers, and she doesn't feel like she can like give her to anyone in the town that she's been delivering the babies to, so she decides to raise her herself. And that also seems like a book with world building, because you have this weird world with like these two villages and this witch in a forest, and apparently this girl also has like a friend dragon, and I don't know what the conflict is. I don't know what happens after that. There's more here on the script description, but it seemed really cool. Like, just that description right there made me think, wow, I want to read that book. So I'm going to read that book. And if you want to read it, it might fit this prompt. Okay. The last team is the Outlaws. Oh, I didn't read you the weakness and the ability of the scribes. So the scribes have the ability to change their to be read list. So every other team, once you declare your list, like the list for the mages that I declared at the beginning of this video, once you've declared your list, you have to stick to it. But the scribes can change it. Their weakness, however, is that they take a long time to document things. So one of their books should take significantly longer than the others, and or be greater than 500 pages. The Outlaws, I couldn't find their ability and their weakness. It was my understanding that the ability and their weakness would be announced in a video posted by the group leader. And at the time that I'm filming this, and since the last time I checked, the group leader for the Outlaws hadn't posted the video, or I couldn't find it. I don't know. But she'll be linked below, and you should be able to find all the information you can by the time this starts. But for the Outlaws, the first place they travel is called Crimson Peaks. These peaks are about to blow. Reread a favorite to soothe them into dormancy. So I don't know what your favorites are, but a favorite of mine that I have found super rereadable, I've already read it twice, I will reread it again, I love this book series, is Cinder by Marissa Meyer. And Cinder is the first book, so this is actually a book I have read before per the prompt, so I can give you good information about it. It's so good. So Cinder is the first book of 4 in the Lunar Chronicles, and each book is like a retelling of a fairy tale. I love fairy tale retellings. I love them so much. And in Cinder, the fairy tale being retold is Cinderella, and it takes place in future New Beijing, where you have things like cyborgs, and the main protagonist is named Cinder, and she's a cyborg, and it's super cool. Cyborgs are people who have been usually in like horrible accidents, and they get saved by having cyborg parts in them, so they're like part robot in some way, but they are considered like second-class citizens. Like, people do not like cyborgs. Cinder's father has died. She has a stepmother who like hates her, and yeah, but she's also a very skilled mechanic, and she oh wow, I'm forgetting things that happen. I think she starts working for or somehow gets involved with the Prince of New Beijing. Like she becomes his mechanic or something like that. And then backdropped to all of this is there's a plague in New Beijing, and they're trying to solve this plague. Cinder's sister gets sick, and she's trying to save her. And then other stuff happens, and in the next few books you get different people that get involved. So the second book is called Scarlet. That's a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. The third book is called Cress. That's a retelling of Rapunzel. And the last book is called Winter, and that's a retelling of Snow White. But like Cinder is the character in all of these books too. You're not changing the story, but new characters are coming in. And for each of the new characters that come in, you get like this retelling of the story. And as their stories intertwine, there's like this other story that happens. It's so good. I love this series so much. So yeah, I would reread that one. If you've read it before, you should reread that one. It's good. Next, the outlaws travel to Queendom Stone. The stone of our royal majesty. What are the royal customs of other lands? Read a book featuring loyalty. And so this one I saw on someone else's TBR list on Twitter, I think. And I was excited about this one because it's by the same author as Cinder. It's called Heartless by Marissa Meyer. And this is a retelling of Alice in Wonderland, but it's about the Queen of Hearts and before she became the evil Queen of Hearts. When she was just a girl, it says, long before she was the terror of Wonderland, she was just a girl who wanted to fall in love. It's so cute. And then apparently it's about how she meets someone named Jest, a court jester, and their adventures or something. I haven't read the book, but she's the Queen of Hearts. There's like a little crown on the cover, so I'm sure it involves royalty. I'm excited. I definitely want to read this book. Some of the books I'm skeptical about, like We Are the Ants. It's on my TBR. I will read it, but I'm skeptical about it. This one I'm super excited for. Next, the outlaws go to the Forgotten Forests. All those open series, the forest knows and feels your forgetfulness. It will sing a mournful lament, tormenting you until you read the next in a series. And so for this one, I thought, oh, I would read Crown of Midnight by Sarah J. Maas. So that would be the sequel to Throne of Glass, which I'm reading. I will be reading for part of my Mage TBR. And then if I were to continue and do any of the outlaw prompts, I would want to continue that series and read Crown of Midnight. Lastly, other than the group book or the alternate challenge, what the outlaws do is visit the Weeping Falls. To pass through the rapids unscathed, you must give to the falls. Read a tearjerker. And I know this one's going to be a tearjerker because I've seen the movie the book got turned into, like the movie based on the book, and the movie is a tearjerker, so I'm sure the book's a tearjerker. And it's Marley and Me, Life and Love with the World's Best Dog by John Grogan. The movie is so sad. So I think that the book is probably sure to be a tearjerker. And that's all I'll say about that. It's a pretty famous movie. I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't seen it, but yeah. So that is everything. Those are all the prompts. That is all the stuff I would read if I were undergoing all of the prompts. That was a lot. This is a long video. But if you've gotten this far, thank you so much. I will link as much information as I can down below to Scribd, to the readathon, to the different show hosts, to some of the other TBRs I've seen or book recommendation videos I've seen, so that you have all the information you need to also join this readathon. It is being primarily hosted through Twitter. There will be lots of other challenges and things posted on Twitter, I haven't touched my Twitter in like 6 years, and I reactivated it for this readathon. Yeah. So I will see you next time. If you've liked what you've seen, please be sure to like, comment, and or subscribe so that I know. And I'll see you next time. Bye.